Good afternoon. My name is Austin Blyer. I am the President and CEO of MarineSync Corporation. We are a IoT business. We're located out of Southern California, which is probably a presentation in its own on why not to do business out of California. But today we'll focus on some of the LoRaWAN products that we use and we integrate and kind of the business that we do. Today I wanted to talk about kind of how some of the innovations along the way have led us to really mainstreaming our utility metering application. Now, I founded MarineSync in 2009, and born and raised in San Diego and being around the water, we started MarineSync. Basically, the seed capital came from a grant that we were able to get for helping the federal government get telemetry data and automate reporting on pump out equipment. And that probably doesn't sit with any of you guys what a pump out is, but pump outs are used for removing waste onboard vessels and putting it into the sewer systems. And back in 2008, 2009, there was a CVA grant that came out, which stands for Clean Vessel Act, and they were handing out money to help subsidize some of this equipment. And they were trying to promote these marinas to go out and buy pump outs to help with clean water. They're handing out all this money. They're trying to figure out, well, where's all the money going? And how do we automate and really kind of create some reporting mechanism in place to figure out whether or not this money is being used properly? So what we had done at that time, my family, we have 3 family businesses, but my grandfather had created a pump 70 years ago that was used in this industry. So it was a great introduction for us. There was really nobody else that I think went after the RFP because nobody was looking to figure out how much poop went through a pump. But we were well placed for this. And the IoT industry back then really didn't exist. It was more of the M2M world. And what we were looking at was trying to figure out a device that allowed us to connect to these pumps somewhat universally, measuring certain outputs on it for runtime, cycle history, 4 to 20 milliamp inputs for current, volume accumulation, and also kind of the second part of it was notification. So when things were not working, how can we notify somebody? So that was kind of the first place that we started. After that, we then had to quickly pivot and kind of figure out something that was going to make some money because there wasn't that many pump outs in the world. So we had created a vessel monitoring system at the time, and then from that, which was a giant failure, it turned into a utility monitoring system very quickly just based on the demand. So I'll run you through real quickly kind of how this worked and how these different innovations kind of led us to where we are today, which is a very successful utility metering, monitoring, control, and edge automation company. So our MS1 pump out monitoring system, this was a cellular RTU. This was back in 2009. We couldn't get practically any of the carriers out there to want to support us. Data plans became one of the biggest limiting factors to what we were able to put out on the docks and on these remote locations. We had to create something that was using very nominal amounts of bandwidth, something that was easy to set up and really kind of a one device per location. So we created this cellular RTU, had 4 or 5 different inputs, a couple different outputs, and we were able to get all of that data back to our portal and illustrate it for the individual state coordinators that were administering the grant. It was relatively successful. It's the gold standard in that industry, which is relatively small, but we were specified into every single grant-funded pump out that was put into service throughout the entire country. Our goal was that they were going to go back and retroactively require them to put them in. However, that didn't happen. So this particular product line continued to go through different iterations, obviously with 2G cellular going sunset. We then went to a 3G, then a 4G, and now we're looking at using NB-IoT and some of the different LoRaWAN devices that can similarly do a function with respect to monitoring. The biggest challenge with this is that it's kind of on a one-to-one basis. So we don't have networks where we have a ton of endpoints. It's really just a singular pump or a couple different pumps that are operating somewhat autonomously out in the marketplace. Boats pull up, they pump out, alarms go off, power gets lost, and then that information gets pushed to either a grant coordinator or a marine administrator that would then run with it. So again, on a one-to-one basis, this became a very challenging application for us as a business because this is kind of where we got started, and then we really had to figure out what our next step was going to be. Being from San Diego and being an avid boater, the one application that we really wanted to touch on was boating, something that we could actually use. And what we found at that time was that vessel monitoring was really going after some of the larger boaters and the larger yachts. It was still expensive. We're talking early 2000s, so cellular devices, typically wired throughout a vessel that are monitoring onboard conditions, battery power, leak detection, being able to put sensors throughout the bilge of a vessel and notify the boat owner if something was going wrong. But at $5,000 to $10,000, if not higher than that, the average pleasure boater or recreational boater, someone that had a vessel that was under 40 feet, they weren't touching it, right? So we looked at this application and said, well, can we do it better? So we developed a system that was called MS2. And MS2 is a vessel monitoring system that we had looked at Zigbee and some other different radio frequencies and protocols and did a ton of testing to try to figure out how we were going to get communication from the boat landside to a base station of some type and then up to the cloud where we could process that. And again, really trying to drive the fact that we needed to keep our costing low, cellular was off the table. We had a ton of contacts in the marina industry from this first product line that we had developed, right? So we're putting pump out monitors at all of these different locations. Well, let's see if we can create a new amenity or something that we can put into the marinas themselves. So at that time, again, early on, LoRaWAN wasn't around. It hadn't been developed really to the point that we could commercially create a product off of it. We were using a radio, Cyflex radio that I think layered bottom out, but anyways, it was a module, FCC certified module. We did a complete design of a circuit board that had a number of different inputs and outputs. These units were ruggedized and they were installed on boats, right? We had a base station that we would sell to a marina with a nice antenna, push a signal out there, and then any vessel that had our device on it would be able to communicate two-way. The portal would provide basic telemetry on the vessel, battery voltages, inputs. We had an accelerometer on it. We could tell how the boat was sitting in its slip. So if it started to take on water and it started to list in one direction, we could use all those points and essentially create some intelligence as to when there was a problem at the marina and send either the owner of the vessel or the owner of the marina notification so they could respond to it. This was a gigantic failure. I mean, I cannot even explain to you how hard we tried to push this product. It was so early on, text message notifications were just in its infancy. So any of this text message notifications that we get today when you check into the hotel, no one had heard of this back then. And logging into a portal or having any of this information in front of us, I mean, iPhones were just kind of coming out. It was ahead of its time. And it was an uphill battle. Every single location had to have a base station, and our range with repeaters and the wireless that we were using at the time was only, I don't know, quarter of a mile or so. So we were installing these equipment down in the Fresnel zone, water line, if not below, wherever the customer was installing it. We're trying to push a signal in a dynamic environment, tides, different materials on boats, and we basically went through an R&D phase for 8 months of testing, and we finally landed on this great design, this great architecture, and we put this into service, but we couldn't get anyone to buy it. We looked at it in the sense that if the marina had a new amenity, right, we could still be a B2B business. We would sell to the marina would sell to their customers. And they looked at it like this was great. Everybody said, oh yeah, we want this. Let's go ahead and do it. Sign us up. And then we got stuck in the legal minutia of, okay, well, if a boat sinks, are you responsible? Is the marina responsible? They don't get the notification, they're sleeping. What are we going to do? And it went on and on and on. About a year and a half, 2 years into this, we were putting up our own network, our own infrastructure in certain areas that were real high density boating networks, boating areas, but we still could not get traction. This was like, 500,000 pieces were out there, which is just not enough to be sustainable. We kept hearing the same thing though. We would take this to different trade shows and conferences. We would say, come on, buy this boat monitoring system. There's nothing like it out there. I'm a boater. you got to take it from me. They want this. And the marina owners and the marina managers would say, this is great. This is exactly what we want. This is something new that we can charge in addition to their slip fees for. Unfortunately, it went nowhere. And we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. At the end of the day, what we kept hearing at every one of these conferences was, hey, can you just tell us how much power each one of these boats are using down on the docks? That would be very helpful to us. And we don't have to go through the whole who's responsible for the boat sinking. And we kind of just turned away from the idea for a long time. We just had no interest in doing it because we had put so much money into the development of a product that we knew was great. And I mean, I don't know, this probably was 6 months before we were about to run out of money with this. And at this point, we have diversified this offering. We're now putting in free base stations and we're monitoring, but we couldn't, every time someone would call in and say, I want it, that's a $4,000 base station I got to go put in for one customer that's paying me $25 a month. Like, that will never pencil out. So it went on and on and on. We kept hearing the same thing. And finally, we have this aha moment. Well, if everybody wants utility monitoring, can we just take this device and maybe just write a piece of software real quick on it and turn the inputs from water sensors and different alarms and turn it into something that can count pulses? So the engineering team sat down. We basically were on the verge of failure. And they said, well, yeah, we can do it. We can do it relatively quickly. I mean, that's not what we designed here. That's not what we developed. We have an IP67K enclosure that can be put underwater to 30 meters. You want to put something in a utility pedestal? Like, that's a pretty controlled environment. But we had the back end and the architecture to do it. So we took this device in a different format, and we took it down to a conference down in the Caribbean where utilities are incredibly expensive. And I gave it to a marina down at Nanny Cay Marina. And they installed it in their power pedestal. We gave them about 5 of them. And within about 30 days, they had put in a purchase order for 500. And then every single marina around them found out what we were doing, and they all put in purchase orders for 500 pieces. And it turned into the fact that what we had developed and what we had tried so hard to make work, it was never going to work, and we had the product in front of us the whole time. So we developed RUM. And RUM, in the marina world, remote utility monitoring. And this is what it turned out to be.
You're here managing a marina, renting slips, keeping customers satisfied, charging customers each month for slips and utilities. What would help is being able to get accurate meter readings wirelessly. Doesn't seem that complicated, right? Get meter readings from here into the office up there. There's never been a reliable option, but along comes a new technology to wirelessly manage utilities called RUM, and now there is. RUM automates their meter readings at each pedestal, so all you have to do is search for the slips you want. Now you have all the meter readings in less than a minute, which can be emailed to your customers or exported directly into your billing system. Best of all, it doesn't rely on your Wi-Fi system, which we all know is a good thing. But there are other features RUM offers beyond meter readings, like ground fault management. RUM monitors each pedestal throughout your facility, notifying you when ground fault's been detected. RUM gives you the option to wirelessly shut off power right from your phone or your desktop. RUM was founded on the idea that using the right tools saves everyone time and money. This is managing a marina. This is RUM by MarineSync.
So that kind of gives you an idea of the environment that we work in, right? Marinas are nothing more than glorified parking spaces for boats, and they're high-density monitoring areas. So we have facilities that might have 50 slips all the way up to large facilities that are going to have in the thousands of slips. And the biggest challenge they had was reading utility meters every month, and it was somewhat of a short straw. Who was going to go out there, read these little counters, integrated meters? They weren't the nice socket-style meters. They were little integrated counters that looked like odometers. They would write it down on a Excel spreadsheet. They'd bring it up into the front office. They would try to dissect that, put it into a billing software, and then they would send it out. Our device at that time was this boat monitoring system that had 4 inputs. So we were connecting to these meters, we were getting them the data, and we were sending it back to the cloud where they could basically type it in on their billing software. What we needed to do at that point in time was take our boat monitor and turn it into a utility device. And that's what we did. We basically went back to the drawing boards, we took everything we had learned on our boat monitoring system, and we created RUM, which is a wireless platform specifically designed for reading meters, controlling utilities, and integrating process automation. And that last line of process integration, of automation, is huge for us, because what we were doing was just taking the meter readings. We weren't really doing anything else. We were replacing labor with a wireless capability that is somewhat novel. I mean, it's something that they've been doing in sub-metering for a long time in apartment buildings. What we needed to do was basically go back to the drawing board and figure out what they needed. So we went and we worked with OEMs like Eaton, High Power, Marine Electrical Equipment, all these people that were designing the actual utility pedestals that the boats plug into. And we took to them and we said, hey, this is what we currently have. We've got good demand for it. It's proven, it's reliable. What would you guys want if we went ahead and redesigned this? And they said, well, ground fault is a big problem in marinas, which basically means a boat plugs in, current might be leaving the boat, bad connection somewhere, AC current's going in there, people are being shocked, electric shock drowning. We want to be able to monitor that. I said, okay, we can do that. They said, well, we want to be able to turn water on and off. Can you do that? Yep, we can do that. And we went back and we designed a brand new device that we still sell today, which is called our RUM OG, that's basically a PLC that can do everything from lighting control, ground fault monitoring, has relay outputs on it, has meter inputs on it. And these devices get integrated by OEMs at the factory, and they're sold to customers around the world. So this great idea that we had that was a horrible failure turned into essentially our hallmark product, if you will. And today, we're now continuing to do other iterations of it to continue to help. We've had to redesign our enclosures, make it more rugged, but ultimately, this device that we had created cost too much. We found out that about 90% of our customer base were only using it for metering. So we've got a Swiss Army knife that everyone's just using the toothpick, and we're selling them this great device that does so much LED control. No one's using it. So we knew we had to go do it all over again. And that's where LoRaWAN came in. We were struggling with cost. We didn't really want to go back and retool new enclosures, redo PCBs, figure out, hey, are they going to want to buy this other product if we go and develop it? Because it's competing with the product that we are already designed and we're already selling. So we had the cost issue, which was a problem. And then we started to get EOLs on a lot of the components. We designed this thing in the early 2000s for boat monitoring, and we were still using the Cyflex module that LS Research sold to Laird that finally discontinued. Now we have to go back and redesign a complete radio from the ground up and get that back through FCC and back through UL. And it just snowballed. Every single time we turned around, we were back to the drawing board in R&D. And again, from a standpoint of our customers, they don't care. They just want this thing to work. They want to be able to just write us the check every month and turn their computers on and get their readings. And then, obviously with COVID, we had supply chain issues. So even though we were getting EOLs and we were putting in new components, now we can't even get the components. So we found ourselves in a predicament where we had to make a change. And we had, for a long period of time, wanted to get into other markets besides the marina. I mean, there's only 12,000 marinas. It's not that big of a market. And we're now the gold standard. We're being integrated by all the OEMs that are catering to this industry. But we had to get out of there, and we had to figure out a device or some way to be able to offer these services outside of that marine market. So we turned to Actility, which was after interviewing a handful of network servers and trying to figure out whether or not we wanted to do this on our own or take on a partner to help us. We're partnered with Microsoft, went to Azure, talked to them at great lengths of figuring out what the best integration would be. And then we started looking at LoRa and LoRaWAN and figuring out exactly what we could do to get to market quickly, right? We've got hardware that we can't manufacture because we can't get components on. And we've got an application that's fantastic, but we can't continue to grow unless we are able to actually put hardware into the field. So when we started to look at what our next step would be, LoRaWAN became one of these just, it was on every whiteboard in our office because there were so many products that were out there that were certified for LoRaWAN that we could go to quickly resolve what we needed to do. It wasn't how we would have done it, but it gave us the opportunity to get out there and basically service the market that we were already the leader in. And that was just such a turning point for us. It gave us time, it gave us a little bit of headspace in order to be able to develop new products and services on our end. That way we can control the manufacturing on it, that are LoRa devices, that are LoRaWAN approved, and it let us basically kind of behind the scenes, our customers don't know what's in the pedestal. It's a good looking device, I'm proud of it, but at the end of the day, no one sees it. So making the switch and going from a proprietary architecture and a proprietary product and moving over to a LoRaWAN-based offering where we can essentially get online, get into the marketplace, walk through conferences and trade shows and figure out how we can take other devices and integrate them into our offering has become a game changer for our company. We've now broken into a second company called Util IoT. MarineSync was great when we were catering to the marine market, but as soon as we would go into other markets, they would look at us and say, well, that's cool, that's probably expensive. So we started Util IoT, and what Util IoT allowed us to do is quickly move into other sectors. RV parks. Every single RV park that's being built right now, for the most part, is including our hardware in it. And it's not just our hardware. It's hardware like Vision Metering's, their meter. That's huge for us. Now we've got a utility meter that's California Weights and Measures certified that I can basically take and stick in there, remotely read, remotely control on our platform. Every RV park out there right now, it's not a function of demand, it's a function of cost. Everybody wants to be able to remotely read and remotely control the utilities at their pedestals or wherever they are, whatever the application is. It's just how do we provide it to them at a reasonable rate. Util IoT has started to basically break in now to the RV parks, self-service. We're in one of our Fortune 100 companies, Love's Travel Stops. What these guys have done is they've looked at all of their truck stops, which are typically 50-acre sites, and they've realized that this huge surge in the RV space has led to more people buying RVs during COVID and being on the road more often. They've taken their 50-acre sites, they've cut them up in half, and they've created these self-serve RV parks that aren't the traditional RV park in the sense that there's a pool and a dog run and a tennis court and a pickleball. They're basically on the way. And the solution that they needed was, hey, how do we allow someone to come up, scan a QR code on a utility pedestal, which will check them in, turn the power on, turn the water on, and open the dump lid so that they can pump out. That's where we came in. We were able to get onto marketplaces, find the right hardware at the time. We now develop it, but at the time, we were able to find it, and we were basically able to integrate that in addition to allowing the different third-party operators and software companies to be able to get on and use our API to do all the hard work. So RV parks, we were able to hit that, self-serve, again, like a Love's Travel Stop. That application is great for us. It gives us great automation, especially edge automation, where the majority of software companies that are out there that don't touch hardware, we're able to actually give them something to use now. Our API ties into it. Third-party integrators, billing, Camp Life, Marina Go, all these different software companies now are using our equipment in order to facilitate the end user experience and really promote a more automated functionality. So what we were able to do, again, from the innovation of the different parts and pieces that have kind of led us all the way down the road, we were able to move and pivot using LoRaWAN approved devices and quickly bring them on a network that we had already developed and a sector that we had already taken care of for so long, and be able to provide an end solution to them that is truly at the enterprise level. And we're continuing to grow every day with it. I think I had on here too, just process automation. The actual application itself on the process automation is pretty great because in the sense that what Love's is doing is something they're also doing within the marina space as well. So Pacific Northwest, where you have travelers and people on boaters that are coming in and out, the Caribbean, where the cost of electricity, the cost of water is so expensive that they're generating it on their own. They need to be able to control those utilities. So being able to put in networks and be able to use off-the-shelf hardware and to walk through a marketplace like they've got outside today and pick from all of those and put them onto a network that's our network, that we're managing, and a software that we've put out there, has just created such an opportunity for our type of businesses that are looking at these kind of niche bits and pieces. We're not a public utility company, but we are offering public utility and sub-metering to the different sectors that really need it, and it's really due to the agnostic nature of what LoRaWAN has been able to bring to us, that we don't have to develop it all on our own. We can take those different hardware manufacturers, get those bits and pieces, and bring them all together in a nice looking and a very functional application. Outside of that, I figured we could do a little Q&A if you guys have any questions, but that's how we wanted to present today, and appreciate your time. Yeah.
You said you initially looked for the hardware elsewhere, and now you're developing it yourself?
Correct.
What was the key driver for you to make that decision to build the hardware yourself?
The biggest challenge for us was the manufacturing. We found that the majority of LoRaWAN approved devices were not manufactured here in the United States. We were looking for devices that would provide pulse counting, output control, H-bridge, very specific functions that when we found them, they were produced in Russia, Middle East, in different areas that we were buying them, but it was very uncomfortable for us. We're writing deposits and checks and wiring money, and we have no control of the manufacturing process. We have very little information on it. We have to run our products through UL, through FCC, and trying to get other companies to do this was very difficult for us. So at some point, we recognized the fact that this is a buffer, that we can always do this. And again, we will continue to rely on other companies to do so. Tank level monitoring, very small part of our business, but we get asked for it every once in a while, right? I'm not going to go out and create a tank monitoring sensor. There's no reason for me to do so. But manufacturing it on our own was definitely one of those things. The other big challenge that we always face, that we find that LoRaWAN devices really cater to, is battery powered. We run typically all of our devices in a Class C because we need that bidirectional, close to real-time connectivity with them to be able to actuate, turn things on and off, call down to it. What's the meter reading now? Turn on this, turn off that. So since they're Class C, they typically all have external power supplies. A lot of devices that we're finding out there are battery powered, which is great, but in our application and that Class C, it's not needed. So we needed something that could switch relatively quickly between a line power and a battery power. If it's there or if it's present, fantastic. If it's not, we'll operate it off an AC/DC power supply. Yeah.
Where do you plan to go next? What type of verticals, metering, anything else?
Yeah, we have a lot of, the RV side of our business has grown in the thousands of % in the last 2 years. There is a ton of opportunity still in that industry. It's just with state parks, a lot of government. We have a ton of, our first product, our MS1, that was doing monitoring for CVA and other grants. We see a lot of interest also coming back full circle on how are they monitoring. There was an offering that was out there a while ago. It was called Iron Ranger, and this is what they used to use in in all the state parks. And it was on the honor system to go up and put your $5 and slide it into this iron machine. And they're trying to automate a lot of this, but they're missing the key components of it, the connectivity component of it, the security on it. How are they going to implement this? So we're starting to do a lot of work into that side of the business. And also on remote control type within these two different environments. So controlling water valves, controlling different automations for actuating pumps or actuating different hoses. So a lot of that's kind of getting into that. And that will ultimately turn into some more of the battery powered things where we don't have line if they're out and about. Cool. I appreciate your time. Thank you guys very much.